Pod Me If You Can is brought to you by The Glove by Australian author David Farrell. Head to facebook.com/theglovebook for more information.
Welcome to Pod Me If You Can, I'm David Farrell. Today on the show, it's the 1997 TV movie Killing Mr. Griffin, which stars Mario Lopez, Amy Jo Johnson, and Michelle Williams.
Pod Me If You Can, movie reviews.
Mr. Griffin, played by Jay Thomas, is the kind of English teacher that demands attention and punctual attendance. He's in a perpetually bad mood. In his classes are several jocks, including Dave and Mark, played by Mario Lopez and Scott Basdow, and several nerds, including Susan and Maya, played by Amy Jo Johnson and Michelle Williams. When Mr. Griffin embarrasses the jocks, while one of them is attempting to become elected student body president, the students hatch a plan for revenge that includes Susan, Amy Jo Johnson, and goes horribly wrong. So based on the novel of the same name, which everybody seems to report is better than this film, this is from the writer of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Her name is Lois Duncan, and it is a cautionary tale about the consequences of your actions, similar to I Know What You Did Last Summer is. Mr. Griffin in this film is way too aggressive, and I found you've got to make the teacher a jerk or they don't want to kill him, basically. It's the same essential plot as Teaching Mrs. Tingle, I believe, with Katie Holmes. But Mr. Griffin in this, it feels like he's way too far in one direction. The prank they initially want to pull on him, though, isn't killing him. The idea they have is kidnapping him as a kind of senior's prank. So they use Amy Jo Johnson's character as bait, and pretty much what they have to do is kidnap him, and they want to make a videotape embarrassing him. However, he needs heart medication, and also when they leave him tied up for a little while, they come back and he's dead. And obviously it escalates into a whole nother crime. Now the reason they use Susan is pretty much that he seems to admire her and he will stop and have a chat to her after class. But I kind of found it to be more than that. Mr. Griffin is portrayed to be a married man, but it seems like he might have affections for Susan. He also seems to be channeling something from his own high school experience, where perhaps he was picked on by jocks, or he didn't get the popular girl. Either way, it feels like she's the perfect bait for this, and unfortunately, his glances across the quad made me feel a bit creepy about Mr. Griffin's intentions with her. It is a bit of a stretch to seem like people would go along with this prank. I mean, think about it. As a student, would you ever think, I will kidnap an adult? Like, regardless of if you had access to chloroform, which they don't explain in this, the consequences, like, more of them should have said no. They all went for it in the end. And while no one intended to kill him, one of them is ultimately responsible for the murder. And it seems super obvious from the outset who it is, and that doesn't need to change. It's got this kind of lack of suspense and scariness that a lot of TV movies and midday movies have. So after Mr. Griffin's dead, they need to dispose of a body, and it's an accidental killing, which is exactly the plot of I Know What You Did Last Summer. But when they do dispose of the body, they bury him in a very shallow grave, with the ropes that they tied him up in still around his hands and feet, and it just feels like they have panicked a bit and nobody's thought it through. It's a shallow grave, and of course he's discovered. There's also a videotape because they wanted to embarrass him, and instead of erasing it, which is what the student involved says, he keeps it and watches it like a creepy memento of somebody who wants to remember the person he killed, which would have been more interesting to lean into, perhaps, in an American Psycho kind of way. There's a creepy dream sequence to a cover of I Will Survive, where, racked with guilt, Susan imagines being killed and buried the way they did with Mr. Griffin. And there's lots of tilting camera work and creepy imagery to go along. It's probably the best sequence of the film. The worst part about this is probably the overacting. Amy Jo Johnson is fine, Scott Basdow holds his own, but the other girls in this group, they squeal and scream and seem very two-dimensional, and perhaps they're just there for their looks, but I found their overacting to take me out of this movie. Michelle Williams works in a cinema and makes multiple film references during the movie, But she's not part of the group that does the prank, and she's really the friend of Amy Jo Johnson's character, so it's a bit part for Michelle Williams here. At the end of the film, after Amy Jo Johnson's character confesses, they let her go, which is interesting. And her dad says, "I wish I could tell her everything's going to be okay, but she's not my little girl anymore." Which I guess means this whole experience has made her grow up, not that he's disowning her as a child. Look, this is a pretty average TV movie. No real scares or notable scenes. As I said, the creepy "I will survive" dream sequence is a highlight, but it's pretty forgettable otherwise. And this feels like a cash grab in the wake of Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Check out our podcast at www.podmeifyoucan.com.